Well, we will have to wait until next week to learn the pleas from suspended Jacksonville council members Katrina Brown and Reggie Brown. The focus at a hearing today was Katrina Brown's finances and how she will be represented in court. Now, Mrs. Brown took an oath backing an affidavit submitted earlier today, asserting that her debts are greater than her assets and that she's unable to afford an attorney. The judge agreed, but said she can't afford to contribute to that cost, requiring her to pay the court $1,000 by July 30th and $100 each month after. Although there were no pleas inside the courtroom today, both Reggie Brown and the attorney representing Katrina Brown today left no question about what to expect.
I'm going to still say that I'm innocent, and we will wait and watch the process unfold.
It's always a not guilty plea, and of course she's asserted her innocence, as have I. So the arraignments are invariably, here's the charge, how do you plead? Not guilty. All right, boom, then we start with setting the different court dates and whatnot.
So Reggie Brown has already been assigned a court-appointed attorney, although an attorney for Katrina Brown going forward was not named today. The judge did set arraignment for this coming Monday afternoon at 2 o'clock.